Welcome to Theorycraft, a live podcast where game developers and their players engage in conversation. I can't believe I remember that. It's been, 2 months? It's great to be back. I hope everybody had a really nice August. I'm presuming we all did. Candace, how you been? What is up?
Doing good. I've been stuck in a time loop playing Returnal, and I can't stop. Returnal is like, I could gush about this game for the entire podcast. I won't, but I could. And oh my God. And if you ever wanted like sound inspiration.
I've heard
Yes.
it's perfect. Glad you've been gaming. Anything else?
Do we know if Kevin's coming on today?
He was in hosts, so I'm hoping so.
It is storming really bad in Austin where we are, and it's possible he doesn't have power. It's also possible that if he joins and if I leave, it's because I lost my power.
Okay, well, Chris and I will just keep it going. Yeah, I guess he didn't explicitly say yes, but he was talking in host yesterday, so he should know. This is all the stuff I'll put at the top of the podcast, the important bits. Good. Chris, what have you been up to, man?
Just making games.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of working during the summer, which is exciting and fun. And yeah, that's where I'm at now. I'm in the office right now.
It sounds great. Whatever you did with your microphone, this is like a good mic night for you. So I'm hyped for that. Actually,
does it sound good?
Dude, maybe it's the
you guys kind of sound like
it's the Tim L boost.
You get a little robotic. I don't know if that's
Oh, me, I don't know.
Oh yeah, the Tim L boost.
The Tim L boosts. Yeah, no, we're like full fucking lossless quality almost here now. That's really exciting. Cool. Making games. You've been playing anything?
I played like a lot of Super Mario Strikers. But I'm kind of over that game now. But that was a good game.
The soccer.
That's kind of like
game?
the last game I really played a lot of. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Like Nintendo tried to do this whole like guild thing in the game, which I thought was intriguing. And I kind of thought that it was going to flop just because Nintendo can't do any kind of guild sort of thing, any kind of social shit they're terrible at. And so I thought, well, this looks interesting. They keep talking about it. Let's give it a try. And yeah, it was basically a huge fail. But, you try to like all join a group together with like 6 people and it felt like everybody individually had to connect with each other. So
yeah. In terms of their like online, group stuff, net code, lobbies and such, I would expect that to be a nightmare. But it's weird because other than that, I feel like their ventures into online, like they're fucking savants. They'll just randomly come out with Miitomo or like the Miiverse on Wii U and just create these like weird, interesting, kind of like early internet feeling, expressionistic, safe places for people to like leave messages and dress up and do this like async communication. Like it's all really interesting and like not on trend. But then when it comes to the nuts and bolts of games running online, I usually just don't get myself excited for that. And it sounds like kind of what happened here. You can't play soccer with your buddies. That's a bummer.
Yeah, for the audience, can you explain what Super Mario Strikers is?
Yeah, it's just basically sort of like a team. You could play it solo, or you could play it in a team. It's like sort of soccer, but with more of a like Nintendo-y, I don't know how to explain it, like their own like little take of it. And it's similar to a game that was on, what was it on, Luca? Do you know if it was on Nintendo 64, the predecessor?
It was a soccer game? I don't know. I can't remember the last cartoony soccer game I played besides like Mega Man Soccer. And that was definitely Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, it was just... Yeah, so it was also called Super Mario Strikers. So the new one is called like Battle League or something like that. But it's like sort of like soccer, sort of like football, and you can like tackle people and do damage to them. And yeah, I don't know. It's like a little like kind of fun, just session based sort of sports sort of game. Usually, I don't like any kind of sports games. They're just too dry and like slow for me. Like for example, I never really liked Madden, but I liked Blitz. And I talk to a lot of people, and usually they have this similar kind of. I really want to play that. Was it Cult of the Lamb? Everybody's talking about it.
Yes, I have been.
I don't know how that became a thing so quick.
I have been playing that. I feel like I'm kind of a month behind the curve on that, but it's got combat and it's got a lot of things that feel similar to the project that I'm working on now. So of course, our eyes all blew open, and we wanted to go check it out. And I've been having fun with it. I think I'm probably nearly done with it. It has a lot of panache. I feel like most Devolver games do. They always are like very stylistic. And so this one definitely has that. It's kind of profane. It's punchy. It's not like super duper violent, but it is kind of dark and cute. it's kind of like the town sim that I've been enjoying the most of like most of these sorts of games that I'm playing. Like I never really stuck to Animal Crossing. I don't even stick to a lot of the simulation sort of let things run and make sure you water your plants type games. We do like oxygen not included and stuff, but this one I've been getting pretty into. I think it's really easy for actually in that town loop to like eclipse the time you spent in dungeons. The dungeons are really snappy, but for anyone who doesn't know, this is kind of like a combo dungeon crawler roguelike where you also come back to a town afterwards. And the whole premise of the game is like you're working for some dark underlord and recruiting people from these dungeons to a cult that you're building so that you can bring the dark underlord back to life. But you're a lamb, and it is the cult of the lamb. So everything's really cute. You brainwash people, you sacrifice people. So far, it's been pretty good. So we have like kind of danced around talking around AI as a topic in terms of game creation workflows. I think for a while, AI has come up in terms of encounter design, and Candace has spoken to that a lot. But lately, I'm feeling like I'm just seeing a surge of all of this like AI created concept art. It's becoming really accessible. Chris, I even saw you were messing around with it a little bit. And like it begs a question, when and how is this stuff coming to game development? To what degree is it already there? I'm curious how you two feel about it, like within your disciplines where you feel like it might apply. I obviously have some thoughts within sound. I've kind of written about it before a couple of years ago. None of that's come to fruition yet, but like, are you afraid? Are you excited? Like, what's your feel on the whole matter?
Before we start, I had one of my friends posted on Twitter today talking about there is an amount of outrage that someone will use a specific search term and then generate some piece of art and then say like, I made this.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, no, I mean, the AI made it, but you also like, you need to give them credit because they found the search term, right? And there is some like, if you did any digging into, I don't want to say it because then people are going to Google it, but there's this fascinating Twitter thread about AI and like how the inverse of a lot of things is like this image of this really creepy looking woman person with like rosacea on her face, and I guess I'll say that they call her Loeb in the thread, and how like she can end up haunting a lot of your pictures because now your AI is like learned that this is the thing that you want or something like that. Anyways, the point of it is like discovering those kind of things. There is some sort of, you should be able to give credit to someone for that kind of exploration, and kind of like how you're not inventing words when you're using poetry, you're still inventing like the right words that bring up these images. So it feels like it's disingenuous to say that there's like no skill or creativity involved in making an AI generated image and like knowing how to make something, poignant or shocking or beautiful or gruesome, and like knowing how to manipulate it, like playing an instrument, right? But then to some extent there has to be like, you can't take full credit because when you say I made this, someone's going to think, oh, you're a 2D art or you're 3D art. So like we just like the world needs a better vernacular for what like discovering something in a neural network or like an AI is.
Mm-hmm.
And so like given that, if we were to create a vernacular, or if we were to come to some understanding about like, this is like human blood, sweat, and tears, and this is like AI stuff, I think that will help people toe the line between uncanny valley. I don't know, like it's kind of a bigger topic than probably I should get into. But my point there is that when it comes to credit, that's where it starts getting tricky, right? Because at some point, what if the AI people were to say like, nope, everything here is like ours, and we can sue everybody who's used something? And
you think that's the trickiest part, the credit part?
I mean, it's not the trick. It's just that's how we're struggling to grapple it as a society. But like before we can like fully contextualize it or utilize it in a way that matters, is like,
I see, yeah.
Like, because like if you were to go to an art gallery, for example, and it's all just AI generated printed art versus like going to an art gallery with like a human put a brush to paint, you have a very different emotion, maybe, or maybe you don't. Maybe that's just like gone will be the days of that. But I think similarly, when someone sits down to play a video game, we already toe the line with like procedurally generated content versus handcrafted content. There are some people who love that like handcrafted feel, even if it's procedurally generated. Like your success will be measured by how handcrafted your procedural thing feels. So it doesn't feel like lifeless or mechanical or something like that. So anyway, I think like just with the caveat that like I don't have an opinion either way. I think that you can still be a poet using one of these things, knowing how to subtract from images or add from images and generate things. But also I recognize that like there's a weirdness about it that is not human that is kind of scary in the Skynet way to just like
Yeah, I think it's gonna like mature off of that. I mean, that's AI art like several years ago. Even it's escalated really quickly to where it's hard to determine if it's AI art or something someone made. But certainly a few years ago, it looked like I was just like all the. I mean, especially the faces on a lot of stuff still needs a lot of work. But
for the
yeah,
audience and for posterity, should someone tune into this in 10 years and not understand where AI is at the moment, what we're talking about right now are mostly like the AI generated images via like
Machine
was
learning.
it no,
Yeah.
the machine learn like the DALL-E, and what's the other one? It's like no. It's the other one that everyone's
Midjourney.
using. Midjourney, that's it. And so particularly we're talking about that. There has been some innovation in neural network. Like someone made like a Pokemon game that was neural network based that like you can actually move around in 3D and actually like it was generated by a machine learning algorithm. And so like that's kind of like procedural, but it's also kind of like the link between like outsourcing almost everything and like the machine is just learning to make the game. And I think that's probably where games will end up, especially if I may then open the door to where I think like this could go and like what kind of excites me. Did y'all watch the GDC talk? Speaking of Returnal and how brilliant I think the game is, hello, if you worked on Returnal, please reach out to me. I'm Candace or Thomas on Twitter. They have this particle system that is like their enemies are particles. Like they built such a robust particle system, and by particle system for people who aren't in games, like if you cast a spell in World of Warcraft and you see your hands light up with like fire bits, or if you shoot a projectile or like a missile at someone, or whenever you get hit by something, or whenever you loot something and like the flashes appear, that's what I'm talking about when I say like a particle system. It's not something that was like molded and shaped out of clay or like 3D clay with like a texture wrapped around it, which is a 3D model. The particle is like usually a math problem that's like emitting bits that make a shape of something,
Yeah, that's
but
a good way to
usually
say it.
pretty abstract. Yeah, pretty abstract. But if you look at how the monsters move and die and attack in Returnal, you would never know that it's a particle. And so like and it's basically like it's like Minecraft really. If you can take a monster and make it out of voxels essentially, and then you can like AI like neural network making monsters. Imagine like Spore, right? Spore like there's these it goes crazy because you can just make anything that's like parametric procedural, which means like by parameter. So like there's like a minimum and a maximum on many fields, like minimum leg length and maximum leg length and like minimum legs and maximum legs. And it's just like this infinite combination of parametric procedural. But if you think of what a particle system as powerful as Returnals with a neural network like the DALL-E, you could just generate monsters in video games from a neural network, which is like, fuck, our gerbs, you know? Like, and also it could be horrific. And also like, what if your version of the game happens to be like, oh no, now like, what's her name? Loeb shows up in every one of my images, or like there's just dicks because nobody's doing anything but dicks. And now I'm getting hysterical, so I'm going to stop.
There's a lot to unpack there, as they say. I feel like the discussion around these machine learning algorithms creating assets and how it factors into game development, there are like a couple of ways to breach this topic. There's what you were discussing with the issue of credit, which I think is just like a fundamental business side thing where like we have to really square up like who's going to get paid and how before we get way too deep with making anything with any of this stuff, because holy shit, it's tempting. And I want to start right now, but like let's hammer out of the copyright law so that royalties and revenues are in place. And
like, do we actually trust, especially in the US, like patent law is already so trollsy, like it's already so vulnerable. Like, do we really expect our like archaic judicial system to really understand and internalize and like
100%
police
no.
and even like enforce? So like it's really tricky, and that's why I talked about credit, because like once we can square that out, you'll start seeing more things using it. But for now, everyone's terrified. Like, what if like an example of something you could use right now with AI generated images is like you could create icon art very easily for your game. Let's say you're me and you're making some game in a Unity or like the Unreal Engine because you just want to make some money or something. You're doing it on the side, and you know, right, your employer doesn't know about it. I'm not doing any of those things. But like if I am not an artist, I can't generate like the portraits of your 2D. Like if I want to make a shitty game or like you are just like a box in the middle of the screen, but then like you have a beautiful portrait that like, oh, this is actually you, like the old JRPGs, you know. And AI generated all of those, and then your icons for all of your abilities, like I generated all of those, and like all the 2D images that you see, which is usually like in AAA games or like in modern games, it's like it's like the UI or that kind of stuff. But in these 2D games, you could generate like basically anything. And then but the question is, why aren't people doing it? Well, because they're afraid they'll get the pantsuit off of them.
Yeah, I wonder if it's not working, or if it won't eventually end up working on some sort of like honor/license system, like a license system that does have legal teeth behind it, but has to be some kind of an honor system, because it's going to be very difficult to, put together like a Kotaku expose on some indie game that used an AI engine to create their stuff when the stuff looks like it could have come from a capable artist. And like, how do you backtrace it? I think.
Yeah. That's where NFTs come in, right? Minting. Like, isn't this all just connected? Aren't we all just fucked? But like, I don't even mean that. That's in the case that you're still handcrafting a game with tools assisted work, like searching DALL-E for a heart icon and then using that as your like emblems for the amount of health you have in your game. But I'm talking like in the future. I'm doing future talk, Mang, where it's like your game is like doing it in real time. Like you are having a truly unique experience because no one else is going to have the same thing that you or like your friends in the session are having, which is like, there's the power, right? Like you could have like No Man's Sky, but crazier.
I
and
feel
it could
like
be anything.
I feel like a billionaire that you're trying to pitch to right now, and I'm not exactly sure where it's coming from. Like I'll greenlight whatever you want. Like, yeah, I believe it. It sounds like a great not scam, but like. So what are the parts like within game design? Because I've thought about like how these tool assisted pipelines and how AI doing my job for me how that would feel. But like I don't think about it often on the game design side. When you're talking about games that are being uniquely or handcrafted, this is obviously a step above procedural. This is not just like a bunch of random bits recombining at runtime. This is something thinking and basing its decisions off of like what it already knows works. Like, how do you envision this? Pitch me on, I don't know, what this feels like in game design. Like in the game that you're discussing here, this future shape of an experience, what exactly is the algorithm, we'll call it the algorithm, the machine learning, the AI doing in this case?
Okay.
Assembling a level in real time, is it?
Okay. Yeah, no. Have you ever seen, if y'all haven't watched this talk, I believe that it's on YouTube now. It's not in the GDC vault. But it talks about the procedural tools that Horizon Zero Dawn uses to generate its worlds. Like, not every tree is hand placed in Horizon Zero Dawn. It's like a lot of rules where they say, here's like, but some human assembled a template, like a palette of stuff to use. They're like, here's a tree, and then the procedural will like scale the tree up and down, making it bigger or smaller, making it skinnier or fatter, giving it more or less branches, and it's like rules based off of like a custom created palette. And then what you can do in that editor, because it's so powerful, let's say you wanted to move the road. Like there's a road or like a path, like a dirt path, a footpath that Aloy can traverse, to tell her where to go. And you move that in a traditional game where you hand placed all that shit. Now you got to erase the fucking, because you move the road and then that texture is gone. So now there's like an absence of where a road was, and you have to like paint some more fucking bushes there. And you got to fucking move the trees and like whatever. And then, But their tools say like, no, there's a rule that says trees can never be trees can never be less than 10 feet from a road. So there's always like a clearing from the road, right?
More than X yards from like.
Exactly. And then they'll say like a tree has to have rocks around it. And then like, here's the rules that rocks are. And then around the rocks, there can be this. And it's like, you just keep going until all of a sudden, like your world is created just with math problems and a palette of items.
Yeah.
So what AI can do is make that palette for you in real time. So like instead of it being like these are the bronze deciduous trees with beautiful autumnal leaves or whatever, the AI can just be like, find trees and find ones that are like associated with August. And then on the fly, you can say like, now change that tree that's like associated with August and now make it associated with December. Boom, you have like a without doing extra work to create the snowy trees and to create the snowy path, you have a neural network that's generating that palette that then you're using to put in a rule set to make a game, right? And by the way, if there's any billionaire who wants to invest in my games and my ideas, I got it. come again, Candace R. Thomas on
Okay,
Twitter.
this is the Candace Shillcast, and we're happy to be here.
Okay, so there's like the art, right? But then there's also the AI, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts where we talked about the director, which is kind of like a stab in that direction. The director in Left 4 Dead is basically like, it's an algorithm as well that decides like how well you're doing as a group and decides when to apply pressure. And they have these metrics, like pressure means either like 10 zombies or 2 smokers or an abomination and some swarmers and like all of the shit. And then it decides like, on this run, you're going to have exactly 5 intense moments, and they're going to be this many minutes apart, and then it's going to like do that. And then it's also going to learn like, oh, are you sucking? Okay, well, we'll do like less intense. And that's what the director does. And so like now you just extrapolate that into AI learning, where it's like now anything you've ever done in this game has been recorded and tracked by some AI that's watching your performance. And it can find the right exact balance between you and your friends. And it can, so there's like AI, which is obviously like that we're almost there anyways. It doesn't matter. Like that's not hard. But it can also like, one of the things that's really difficult whenever you make a game that is like a truly global game is that like you'll have either more casual audiences or you'll have like more hardcore audiences, and you always have that struggle. Like I'm going to go ahead and be rude and be like, well, like North America really struggled to win the world first race between like Europe and China. Well, China was usually that's not their fault that they wouldn't win. Like they wouldn't get the content when everyone else got the content, but like. Or like in League of Legends, you have like the Korean players versus the European players, and like the players just play differently, and they have different metas because they have a different language, and they have like they value different things. They value like different kinds of challenge, and some people really value like in a ladder system, they just want to be told they're doing really well, and they don't care if like they know that you're fudging the numbers. But some audiences are like, if you fudge the numbers, then it's not a ladder system. Like regions don't, they don't always agree. So then you have to handcraft the challenge for each region, right? But if the neural network knew that, it can just, based on your location, do you like based on your neighborhood, do you want to feel like the best player in your neighborhood? Okay, well we can do that.
I had no idea Candace is so galaxy brain on AI.
Mind being blown, full pitch mode.
I'm not even done. That's just art and now AI. I could go on.
I think in the short term, more boring applications, which I notice other studios are doing right now. So other startups I talked to, we were talking about AI art, and I'm asking like, do you actually use it? Like, I know it's interesting. Like, do you actually use it at your company? There are some studios using it, but they use it in a way. They use it for like non-artists to show artists what they mean.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Like if they say, oh, what if there was like a zone where it had volcanoes, but then also, it was like, I don't know, had snow on volcanoes. I don't know, whatever. And so they use like the AI art to build an image, and then they surf around different images to like show an artist what they mean. Right. So I think that's kind of interesting. And just for like concept art in general, I think it could be okay. You have to like paint over it. You have to, it's not going to be, you're not going to ship with like AI art. I don't
Not
think.
yet.
Although there are some like Steam games I noticed that are just 100% AI art that they're just making. Like, and so they just, I think one of them is pretty decent at making sprites. So you can like make some sprites using it and stuff like that. At least in the short term, it's challenging just because, of course, like Candace was saying, all the AI art is seeded by real artists. And so, you have, it's this weird gray area where, the AI made it, but it's really seeded by all these other like real artists who are actually.
There's a data set that it has to start
alive.
with. And so, maybe the people who contribute to the data set are the ones that should be getting paid out.
I think theoretically it'll get more mature over time, and it will be less identifiable as a certain artist or something. But
yeah. I mean, right now it seems like these algorithms, they're able to work. Machine learning is able to work when people have like giant buckets of like what's called sanitized data. Data that's like cleaned up in such a way that the algorithms can really make sense of it. And so companies that have been hoarding data and skimming it have a huge advantage with getting started on this kind of stuff. Like if I wanted to train a machine learning algorithm on all the sounds that I've made throughout my career, it would not have very much to go off of. And like anything I could ask it to create in terms of synthesize a sound for me that sounds like X. I mean, it could be interesting. Like I've not tried, I don't know how to try something like that, but it would probably be something that sounds very much like my style, but would not really be very true to the prompt because it just wouldn't have a whole lot to go off of. Not a lot of examples of, honestly, shit that probably sounds better than mine, right?
May I tell you how incorrect you are?
Okay.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
I think the superpower of AI is rapid iteration, testing, and failing. And so what it could do is learn what you like and then keep giving you what you like. So like, oh, you tend to like these beat per minutes and you tend to like these like gaps. You like to, like you like these gaps in intensity when the like drops the beat or something like that. Or you don't like songs that have like snapping in it. So we're going to fucking take that. And it's just like, that's another vector. It's like
no one likes
sound, like music could be generated. Music could be generated just for you. The game could literally be tailored to give you exactly what you want.
Sure.
And now extrapolate that into, and here's my next $1 billion idea. Please hire me. Actually, don't, because I probably wouldn't do it. But like porn games, like that's where it's going to go first, probably.
Woof.
But like imagine like your dream girl, guy, human, I don't know, wolf creature, like AI talking to you, playing all the things that you like, telling you the things you want to hear.
Are we still talking
looking
about
exactly the way you want to look?
Games? Or are we talking
We're
about
still
the
talking
movie
about
Her?
games.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we're talking about like life sims, except this one is extremely custom tailored to you.
In the near term, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, this is some Yuval Harari.
Yeah.
AI knows you
This
better
is
than
some
you know
sapiens
yourself,
shit
but-
here.
It's difficult. It's difficult not to skid over the edge talking about stuff like this, but like in the near term, in like the couple years ahead of now, this stuff is still like largely processing power restrained. It runs on GPUs. It doesn't seem like it's running real time within games. Like it's not crunching data sets while the player plays, and so I feel like.
Oh, may I also correct you?
Are you just going
I'm
to
gonna
say
put
that?
it in live. I'm gonna put it in live chatting. This is
Okay,
this is a game. This is a game that is a neural network. It's not great, obviously, right now, but it's neural network off of Pokemon.
It seems like mostly right now the applications, and granted that could change as soon as like next month or next week, but are in creating things that then sort of go into the game. And so it's interesting. Like when you first started talking about who gets the credit or how complex the statement "I made this" becomes when it came out of a neural network, the output of some black box. I feel like I've thought about this in sound many, many times, and I'm sure any cranky audio engineer has over the years when, as the waterline of tools and what they put at the push of a button rises over time, the quality of everything that's out there just goes up, like objectively goes up. I'm not talking like in terms of substance, but in terms of quality. If you want to get a song mixed now such that it sounds good across all sorts of systems, there have been algorithms that have been trained on large sets of like what pop songs sound good, what each genre sort of is like in different frequency ranges. You can submit your songs, they will be mixed by you. And this stuff is available for a couple $100. You can just do it on your computer. So it's easier than ever to like take sounds and get them to a point where they're like, very production grade. You don't have to go through what I think formerly you would refer to as like all the kind of wizardry of carrying it the last mile. But I think a lot of people might have just considered sort of drudgery. Like there are a lot of processes that I think for most people are not creative, but are just part of the job. And those are the sorts of things that I think people are always happy to see automated away. And I think that is what makes me excited about bringing more of this type of stuff into my workflow, is just like zapping even more drudgery out of the picture. I can't really get enough of it. I'm not precious about any of the parts of making sounds that are slow. Right now I use for the last probably 9 years, like the greatest secret weapon most sound designers have had is like any sort of like happy accident machine where you just drop a ton of different samples in and just like mash a button and it just like randomizes the pitch and the volume and the layers of everything. And 99 times out of 100, the thing that came out sounds like garbage, but like the one time out of 100 you get, you're like, holy shit, this is magic. I wouldn't have thought to do this by myself. This is a seed from which I can make more cool sounds. This is the rapid iteration that you're sort of talking about. It was sort of like somewhere between automatic and manual. Like, you had to parameterize it and then you just kind of kept running it. stuff in that vein has gotten tighter and tighter, and I would be happy to get even further along to a point where it's like what AI is spitting out to me as a person who presumably is still employed, I guess. This is like a world in which I somehow still have a job in game development, even though these exist. Is just like, I think you become more of a curator, an editor, and what you are responsible for then is like caretaking the vision or selecting
Yeah.
things and implementing things like according to the vision of the game, or like driving towards a specific, emotional impact. Like there is, again, this sort of like last mile element now becomes like the human sort of just being like, this stuff passes bar, this does not. I don't really fear that because I feel like it's inevitable, and it's not really worth getting too sad about it. If it makes things cheaper, it's going to happen. That's just how fucking technology goes. Like we never say no. So it just seems like, there will be people out there still designing things by hand in the same way that people are still repairing Model Ts or, grooming horses for patrol wagons. I mean, like there's a nostalgia to it, but things will keep moving. So
Yeah. Like the short to midterm is more AI assisted tools, like you're saying. Like create variants of the sound, right? And it's just AI figures out
perfect example. Yeah.
takes your sound and creates variants, then you could, ship some of those or something.
That's why I started, when we started this episode, I started talking about like, this is what you're describing, curating the experience and striking the right emotional note. That's exactly what I was talking about for like a search artist in an AI art generating tool, right? It's like tool assisted.
Sorry, search artist is the new name of the job title for someone who's pulling stuff from
I only called it that because do y'all remember when Subway called their sandwich makers sandwich artists?
Yeah.
That's like my joke there. But like
well, I do know one studio that employs somebody and they have the title AI art engineer, that all they do is figure out the right prompts to give the AI tool to get the best result. So
it's a hot new market. There. Yeah, totally.
And there will be a market for people who train the robots to have emotion, like to say like, hear the sound. What emotion do you associate with this? Look at this image. What emotion do you associate with this? So if you wanted to say like, I want scary stuff, then like it's going to learn what scary stuff is.
That's where I want to get to.
God help us if we put biometrics in too, where it's like read it, like scanning your heart rate or your breathing rate or like something in your brain where it's like it's reading your body and then it's just doing it automatically and it's not subject to the opinion or the interpretation of someone's own feelings. Like God fucking help us there.
I see.
But it's not like all doom and gloom.
This machine learning algorithm not tested on human subjects, basically. It just generates like horrific, just like body horror, Mortal Kombat 15 reference imagery based on what somebody found abhorrent. Yeah, very cool.
Some other projects I've heard that are being made is like AI assisted tools that basically will just spawn a bunch of AI players who will play test your game and then find where like you fall out of the world here, and they'll automatically create up like a Jira ticket for that space, take a screenshot of the test, steps and all of that sort of thing, or show you kind of how long it takes to, one way the applications say with WoW is like how long it takes to level up to 10 levels or something, and the AI will do that a million times or whatever and tell you how long it takes, and then you can see which zones they lag in, like which ones like awkward moments in progression or something like that. So you'll see a lot of like things like applications like that built into like Unreal and Unity.
Every time we say one of these examples, part of me wants to step back and say like, well, wait, what form of what you're saying already exists right now? And is it actually called this? In the case of like, how fast could you level up? I think a lot of chat would probably chime in. I feel like, yeah, there are bots that would do this. And the AI assisted version of this is that you could have it simulate an infinite number of kind of like player types in terms of like how they might go about leveling. And you would be able to like, refine diving down into the data of like how do players that like tend to just want to adventure around and only explore zone and collect, how long does it take them? And you would really be able to get specific because you have like this high resolution, infinitely growing sort of just like, pool of like what player behaviors as they level could be, because the algorithm is inventing those, as opposed to a bot, which you could probably, you could give it rules and like a behavior tree, obviously, but at some point it's going to cap out. Does that seem appropriate? No?
Well, it does. I mean, that exists. That's like the rudimentary, like they're saying in chat. Like, and also I linked a thing called machinations, which is basically like sim your entire game economy or like your flow of your product or something like that. If it has access to the internet, then it can. And what's useful isn't
Well, you never give it
pawing
access to
through.
the internet. That's like the first fucking rule of sci-fi. Like, are you kidding me? But okay.
It's not. Yes, it can be valuable to have like 600 million data entries. Like, what if someone collected this flower before they killed this monster, before they did this, or like whatever, and got XP in the XP example, or like actually simming economies. I think is actually the more interesting. What you want to do with these machinations is actually get the pendulum swings. You want to be like, what are the outliers, right? Like that. Then you could find out if you're talking about an XP system, like how quick did the quickest person get to max level, or how long did it take the longest person to get to max level? And then you could peer into that data and be like, why was it like that? But like the vast majority of the data that you get doesn't matter. So it's mostly useful when you're looking for outliers and not like exploits, but just like, oh, this is a suboptimal case. So if you're trying to like fine tune or balance something, it can expose flaws in a way that it would take like a very critically minded, beta tester or QA tester months or years of context to really like dig into. And machinations can do it in minutes.
Yeah, I think someone on the Discord works on machinations or whatever.
Machinations. Oops,
That's
if I said it wrong, I'm sorry. Also, great job.
Whatever. Yeah. No, it is really cool. I tried playing around with it for a bit, but it just felt like the learning curve of it. I didn't have enough time to devote to it, but I love the concept. The concept's really cool.
Of machinations, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you can kind of simulate, like, for example, the garrison system. When will people really cap out in the garrisons, right? And then you could find out, oh shit, well, after 6 weeks, everyone's maxed out. We actually wanted this to last, 12 weeks, and so you know where to like tune things so that it lasts that long, right? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's a cool tool. I don't know. It's a little different than, I think, say, AI generated art. It's more of a simulation tool, like Candace was saying, unless they changed it. I don't know if there's really a lot of AI in it. I mean, AI would be interesting if it could automatically generate a machination from your game or something. I don't know how that would work, but I mean, that would be dope.
I'm
Like,
really
imagine how quickly you would find the answer to like the question that we were always asked in the 90s, which was how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? Well, it depends on the size of your tongue and your saliva content. And fucking 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Dara.
For all of that. So I think
please edit that out.
No, that's going on the highlight reel. So I think that one really interesting thing. I mean, as a creative type in game development, I think all sound designers and artists, when they see technology, they are like, what can it do for me that is like new, that's exciting, that someone has never sort of done before? And I think that's, instead of just like kind of simulating what you're already doing or accelerating it, taking some of the burden off you, I think the idea of a neural network that making shit that you've never heard before, which I guess a lot of sound design is, but something that feels like really standout and sharp would be really exciting. And I think that's what excites me most about these sorts of things. It'd be like, I'm trying to think of a game design equivalent of what like an AI system would be. And when you were talking earlier about, your far future director style AI that is just like dynamically building levels and what have you for the player and adjusting difficulty and stuff, it occurred to me that like as a game designer, using something like this in the production pipeline would look like being able to basically enter the prompt of like, give me a new game mode. And it does so without you having explicitly told it, like, here are the 5 rules you can change to make this game mode. It's a thing that is like learned from what people's experiences, what the peaks and valleys are, and what people respond to with excitement. And you could give me a chill game mode. Give me like a fun to watch game mode. You know what I mean?
What you're talking about is like combinatorics, basically, where it's like if I have 5 rule sets, and then the game can have 1 to 5 rules, and then it can just multiply against like just randomly putting rules together. That's kind of like just the combinatorics of, and that's how procedural tends to work right now. Anyways, that's how roguelikes work. They have a bunch of rules, they have a bunch of items, and then just there's like infinite possibilities because you don't have as much time as a player.
But
like you yourself. Yeah. But this is like galaxy brain. This is like we have tested this on so many people now. We know what the median is because we know like peak engagement time is like 6 minutes for this kind of game, and like 21% of people will engage at 6 minutes, so this is popular. Then it rapidly shifts, and so okay, so game duration is 6 minutes, and then within 6 minutes, the ones like the first minute is more intense, boom, that one's going to be, and it's just going to learn. So it's going to know what the baseline for like human enjoyment is, and then it's going to learn how to fine tune it based on you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then it's going to start generating its own rules, which is fine because it's going to test them out on millions of people.
I think I just independently and very, very late arrived at the concept of what a data scientist is. So congratulations to me. Combinatorics, that all makes sense to me. The idea of somehow having fed an algorithm 10,000 hours of raw game mode experience data across dozens and dozens of genres and have it spit something out of the black box that you did not provide any kind of like, combinatoric like flex points to, but that is just like out of the replicator, right? And it's just a brand new mode. It's like, that sounds fantastic. And I think to myself, like, how the fuck are you supposed to sanitize all of the stuff going in that sort of gives an idea of like what a game mode is? And I think that problem across every discipline for which we want to use AI to help us out is going to be a real stepping stone. And the thing that sucks is that like that work is not necessarily going to get done by the powerhouses in that discipline. It's probably going to get done by data scientists asking their fellow sound designer or game designer a couple questions, about like, hey, so like what makes up a sound? Okay, cool. And anywho, am I out over a cliff here? Do we have questions? Anything we can go to? I am like skittering around. And Candace dropped while I was tabbed out. Okay, probably a power issue. Let's get creative up here. Hello, get creative.
Hello.
What's
Can
going
you
on?
hear me?
Yeah, perfectly well. Got a question?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about AI stuff as well. One thing that is a huge issue with MMOs is that, especially if like vanilla WoW, what made it really special was that community feel it gets. With modern MMOs, you kind of want mega servers so that you don't end up with dead servers, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that AI really allows you to do is have soft state for servers.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is you can assign a whole bunch of players to represent nodes in a neural network. And then depending to like a server, like one specific like server channel, I guess you could call it. And then you can retain that like community feel because you have like everyone associated to these soft servers that they automatically go to. And depending on who's on their ignored list or friends list, you can adjust those values to be more preferential with each other.
I think Guild Wars does this, right?
Is that what they do? I'm not sure.
There's an MMO that does this.
Because I'm talking about not being able to manually switch between specific.
No, I gotcha. It's basically sort of CRZ, but then there's like a smart matching of which CRZ shard you go on based on who you played with. Like basically there's like a karma system of like matching. If I play with Luca a lot in dungeons, the AI knows that and will put us in the same CRZ shard if we could fit in that, basically. And so in this way, you kind of create pseudo servers in some way without having to have like set servers that have a maximum and that sort of thing, like how say WoW Classic Lich King does. Yeah, it's an intriguing idea. I'm not an expert at where the technology's at, but the principles make sense to me. Yeah, maybe chat knows. Oh, Lost Ark does it.
Well, I'm just saying, I haven't really noticed it in video games, but maybe that's just because like the way those games are set up, it's not as much around like the social experience as it is just like here's some really cool gameplay and some flashy stuff and some progression. I don't know.
Yeah, no, good point. Good application, I think, of AI for sure. And it's it's pretty timely because Lich King, Wrath of the Lich King Classic is coming out, and I guess they have a few servers up, but then it's hard to get in, and people are in hour queues. I've had so many people reach out to me like, "How do I get through this queue? Can you like hook me up?" And spoiler, no, I can't. But
so you have like a Nexus pass for this shit? Come on.
And I think it's just exacerbated because the modern gamer knows how it works, and so they'll do stuff like use Chrome Remote Desktop on your phone to log in from work or whatever at your home PC, so you can get in the queue and stay. And people know how to stay in the queue now, or stay in online and not log off. And so yeah, it's really a nightmare of game development. So if there could be a solution, something like what you're saying, Get Creative, or something else, that would be a good application for sure.
As far as like AI is concerned, there's this really cool YouTube channel. I can't remember the name. I'll link a video if I remember it. I think it's like 5-minute papers or something. And it always goes over AI and like where it's like recently at. And I'm always like surprised by what new things are coming along, like procedural animation, like the animation not looking bad, a whole bunch of like procedural model work in terms of like how this stuff's going to work in game creation. There's like, I think it was either Google that has like, they're combining essentially neural networks as far as I understand. And now they have like, they had a neural network. You were able to tell this neural network to play Minecraft and do certain things. And it was able to go from point A of like a goal to the end point while playing through the game. So for example, you could tell it to go beat the Ender Dragon. Now I think it was a bit rough around the edges, but that's the kind of things we could probably see.
Yeah.
Yeah, the taskbot section of HEDQ just got way more interesting, it sounds like. We got a lot of people. Dark Glaive, what's going on?
All right.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello. There we go. Hey. It's been a while. Good to see you all.
Yeah.
I do find the AI talk very interesting because I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of like a lot of the issues we're going to run into is a lot of uncanny design and all this stuff when it comes to like how AI currently generates assets, and like there are procedural elements in game development as is. There's also a lot of it that's still very much carefully handcrafted. I think handcrafted is always going to have its spot, though I do see in the foreseeable future AAA going more towards this AI generated.
No, I completely agree. There will come to be a prestige associated with people who are still hand rolling their assets, just like you spend $300 to get something woven by, a woman in Nepal versus something that came off the line.
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Organic game design.
Yeah, you'll get the whole free range certificate,
homegrown,
all the papers. I know.
Yeah, it will be like a green label on the box. Yeah,
sure.
Made by humans.
That'll be the flex, when people come over and they see your Steam library of like only free range, fair trade, organic games. Yeah,
made by hand, no AIs abused, or like free range AIs.
What a tasteful library. Yeah. I like to vote with my wallet. Yeah, no, I think that you're right. That division will probably emerge, but I can't see businesses that need to turn a profit shying away from anything that lets them operate with like this leap in efficiency, right? There was that like, did you see that thing the other day, Chris, where like Matt Booty from Xbox made the comment at some PAX panel about how like he can't wait until the AI people can automate QA. It just seemed like the worst comment at the worst time, like right as like Activision's QA and Raven are all trying to unionize and stuff. It's like, dude,
I didn't see that. When was that?
It was recently. Just read the freaking room, man. Like,
okay, wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait until computers can just handily replace all this department of people just like fighting for fair treatment.
They're still going to need some people because like someone still has to know like. Like what's going to end up happening is like instead of having people testing the games, they'll have the people that like make sure the AI is operating under the correct parameters and all this stuff.
This is the learn to be a robot repairman line of thinking, basically. Someone will have to keep them running. Yeah, I'm sure we'll see this stuff real soon. But it's interesting, Chris, that you're actually getting takes from people who are engaging with this stuff right now. I did like a cursory search around of people using AI to assist with sound design right now before this started, because I don't think I've heard anybody in any of my circles discuss it. People are still mostly doing things the hard way. And I couldn't really turn anything up besides like a couple of just sort of like graduate experiments, basically. I think sound, but I'm not shocked because sound tends to lag behind other disciplines like by a factor of a few years anyway. So
I think, sound feels kind of challenging to me to do.
Mm-hmm. It'll have its own uncanny values.
Not that
for
like
sure.
Illustrations aren't challenging, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it kind of wags the tail a bit on the other disciplines. But
Yeah. The
in
eyes are
terms of
like
innovation, in
they're
that
like the
sense,
prestige
yeah,
sense. So, it'll be a
yeah,
while till we get
yeah.
our turn at the wheel, but
But I really like the idea, like kind of a saying AI can generate some variants or things like that, or maybe change up the bitrate smartly somehow. I don't know. Things like that could be interesting. Harry, how you doing?
what's up?
Hey there, it's going well. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Good.
Yeah, so I guess the thing that caught my attention when you guys were talking was the potential for game types to be kind of formulated through player input. And I have a hard enough time, like being creative myself. So it's like teaching a robot to kind of do that for me. Let me try this again. It's like I feel like I like to compare people to robots sometimes. It's like if you're a person, you're intaking information and then you're kind of making decisions based on those things, your life experiences, things like that. And same could be said about an algorithm that tries to create a game for you or something like that, right? I feel like at some point it's probably better used as more like a tool or a utility than it is like a foundation. It's different from procedural generation, I think, because procedural generation doesn't like it's more of like a framework for the gameplay. I don't know, but if an AI is trying to create a game type for you, it feels like it would be somehow flawed in its and theoretically if time went forever, we would have, flawless like AI that could create flawless games. But it's like when you run out of I don't know if I'm making any sense here. It's like the rules
Hmm.
of a game. I feel like it's really satisfying when there's a system in a game and the system doesn't change, but you learn to master it. Like that's
Yeah.
important to a lot of games.
Yeah,
And
I don't think that that's like an
when
inevitable outcome of AI is generating game modes. I'm sorry. I was just trying to make an example or speculate.
no, but it's not even like game modes. It's like if AI is like the foundation of your game, it's like the AI is always changing it up on you, which keeps it interesting. It's like you're
Mm,
playing against an actual person. But, there's
Hmm.
definitely always going to be, I think, games that people want that don't have that challenge to them, I guess. Like
Hmm.
fighting games
Yeah,
are a
yeah,
huge example of that, right? They're like
yeah.
they always adjust to your gameplay and then it's like it's cool for a bit, but you'd
hmm
rather just play against a real person. Um
What do you think about though if the AI creates the map or the rules, and then that doesn't really change? It just comes from an AI, right?
right, like a
Like,
piece of art.
yeah, you're kind of concerned more as just like you keep playing the game, the rules constantly change because the AI is constantly modifying it,
Mhm.
which I don't think needs to be the case for it to be like an AI driven game. Like they just has to create the game mode, and they try to either based on a prompt you say, hey, I want a game mode that's like 15 minutes, that's skill based between like newbie to hardcore, it's 75% to hardcore or something, and teams of three sort of thing. And then it tries to probably just grabs a bunch of other game modes that it knows that are in those parameters and then spits you something, right? Like that's kind of how I would imagine, like, say, a game mode
Right.
would be made. I still think we're like really far away from like that, but
hmm
um, yeah, that's kind of what I was imagining. But you're kind of imagining something have a canvas posted where you're like moving through the world and things are generating as you're moving.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think is kind of chaos. I wouldn't have a good. It's cool for novelty's sake, but I think that's just kind of yeah. Because I'm with
Right.
you there. I want like some stability, some order, some part of the fun thing about playing a game for humans is wrapping your head around the game, the systems, the world, and
Right.
mastering it, like you said. So yeah, totally with you.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's more like AI definitely feels more like a tool currently, which I mean currently is such a weak way to say it, but like because it's like what about the future? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's like I still think even in the future it would be used as a tool more than any kind of foundation. But maybe someone does it, and that's like the game's whole draw is that like the whole thing is, nothing is set in stone, everything changes all the time. Um, but at that point, I'm wondering, like I feel like developing the algorithm that could tackle something like that would take, it would be the game essentially. Like it would take even longer
Well,
than
it
developing the
would,
game.
unless it's developed and then it's sold as like a third party kind of like middleware thing or something akin to a
Interesting.
game engine, right? Where like someone's built it, and now
Yeah.
everybody's using it. And like, I don't think that the emergence of this stuff means that inevitably the craft of making games, it can only be sort of done this way because the results are just too lifelike and too good, or too dynamic that like it's irresistible. And if you want to make games, you have to use these tools. Like to me, that is like that these tools become as foundational as like a technology as like using a computer, which every game developer arguably, has to engage with right now. But like even right now, there are all sorts of ways to speed up your pipeline. There are all sorts of, speed tree for making landscapes, using Unity or Unreal Engine 5 to do certain things. And there are plenty of developers that just roll their own everything because they want to. That's just their vocation. That is like what they feel compelled to do by their passion. And they're just trying to make a thing. They're not necessarily trying to make the most wide-ranging dynamic thing as fast as possible. Like some part of their soul wants to make a thing and they're going to do it however sort of feels right for them. And so I don't think that this stuff like eclipses all other forms of game development. I think that's a bit doom and gloom. I think that we just have the temptation with any new technology to adopt this kind of like fatalist sort of like, well, once it's in motion, it's obviously going to go to this end point. We won't have any control over it and it'll just be the new norm.
Yeah.
And I don't think it necessarily will be that way with this. I think as long as human beings are still on the planet and wanting to experience stuff other human beings make, there will be a place for games that feel clearly made by human beings. We're very evolved to, take in stuff that comes from other people. And I'm not sure that we'll ever fully put that away, even if the tech is great.
So long as human beings are still on the planet. That's the key word.
I mean, it would like so many discussions on this show
coming
come
for
down
us.
to, like, what are you making games for, right? If you're, and if your answer doesn't, doesn't preclude using all of these sorts of tools, if you're making it because it's like, I want to speak to an experience I had in my childhood, and to me, that means I need to hand paint these things. I want to make a game that me and my friends would like to play, and we loved this, so I already know what the modes are, like there are going to be plenty of people working without the magic box. But for a lot of the
Definitely.
drudgery, which is where I think that like some of this stuff goes away, it's like no one's forcibly taking a horse to work anymore unless they're really fucking cool, So there will be some aspects of production that get shored up by this stuff, and I think that's probably more likely where we're gonna land anytime soon. Who knows?
Definitely.
Like I don't know.
Chris, if you guys don't mind me asking another quick question.
Oh yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
ranting.
No, there's a guy on one of my mod teams who uses AI to generate like concept art reference images, and then he like uses it to inform like his art basically, but he realizes it so it's not like it makes sense. And then someone else said like don't do that. What do you guys think about that? Would you be
Wait, 1 second. So he uses the concept art to do what?
He used an AI to generate a reference image for like a piece of art, and then he uses that AI generated image to basically replicate, but he like changes stuff about it to make it seem like it was
How do you mean replicate? What do you mean by that?
like it's a reference image. He
Paints paints over it. He like uses that from like a starting point. Oh,
you feel like it,
and then his coworker says not to do that.
Yeah, or do you feel like it impedes the creativity or something like that? You're letting the computer do some of that creativity for you.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of think that's. I think that's okay. It just depends. It depends on like what the AI image result is, and it depends on like what the IP of the project is, and like what the art style, art direction is. Because the challenge of like seeding everything with AI generated art is that it can go off style, and then your art director or whoever's on the team is just like, oh, everything just looks so. There's no kind of continuity with stuff, or it doesn't feel like cohesive. So I can understand that. It just kind of depends. But I do know some other studios doing that where they seed with like
Oh,
a
wow.
concept, some AI art, and then paint over that. I mean, one good example is Bellular. Bellular's doing that at his studio with his game. He's been tweeting about showing some like concept art from using Midjourney. They spent like hundreds of dollars because you have to spend money, I think, to generate some of the images or something. I haven't played around with it too much. But they also kind of curated Midjourney to only spit out art that kind of looks like theirs. So they fed it a bunch of their own art or something. Not too sure, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't think there should be any hard set rule. I think it just kind of depends on the team. So
Yeah, and definitely the I feel like it's actually probably very helpful, this AI art generation stuff, for people who don't have access to artists or they aren't artists themselves, like indie people, and just like having references for their vision. I know movies have like those film sets have those rooms that you walk into and the concept art's all over the wall. I'm sure games have that too.
yeah,
Where you can kind of walk in and then just like feel the game. But if you don't have artists, you could maybe fill up a room with a bunch of AI images and
yeah.
with
Something
the
that's
dream.
common for like if you're pitching a game or project to a team or to investors or a publisher or something, you usually kind of have concept art in it. But it's hard to get the concept art because you may not have a full team when you're pitching something, and so you could probably. I've heard of people using AI generated art now to put art in their deck to kind of insinuate what the target they want to do in the game, and maybe they even paint over that to kind of shake it up so it's not something
That's so cool.
foreign. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of possibilities. I think
Yeah.
it's moving. The technology is moving really really fast. And I see a lot of other like little projects spinning up. Like there's like a AI art Google now that started up. I think I
Oh,
posted it in the Discord, but I'll post that
that's
again. So,
that's so cool.
but yeah, good question.
Yeah, artists getting AI generated art was just like I felt like I stepped into a different like era or something. It was the first time I'd ever heard of something like that. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Luke and I were talking like probably it would be cool to get a guest who like works in the sphere or just an
Mm.
expert and stuff. That'd be fun
It's just so easy
to
to
tell us how
go.
full of shit we all of
It's
us
so
are.
easy to go just way off into space. I know. I feel like I come down on the more reserved side, and Candace was just way out there. And I feel like, I don't have enough imagination about this shit. And like somebody grounded telling us where the line is right now would have been cool, but maybe in the future. Once Nodo hires its first data scientist for curating your game mode machine learning algos, you can bring them on.
Yeah.
So like 2 months.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's bring her home. Thanks everybody for coming back out. We will be back probably in 2 weeks. Hopefully everyone's connections will be stable. We'll get Kevin on here. It's going to be great. Chris, it's just really good to talk to you again. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah. No, it'll be good to get Kevin back too. The whole gang, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Kevin had some family stuff going on today, so
You know what to
awesome
do.
time, everybody.
See you all soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Later, gamers.